Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wait a few more minutes just to make sure everyone is signed in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, welcome to Georgia Tech's 2020 Earth Day celebration. My name is Emma Brodzik, and I work in the Office of Solid Waste Management and Recycling. Joining me today is Sarah Neville from the Office of Campus Sustainability and Shan Arora, Director of the Kendeda Building for Innovative Sustainable Design. This year marks the 50th anniversary of International Earth Day, spurred by the environmental revolution of the 1970s and the 23rd celebration for Georgia Tech. While these are unprecedented times and not the event we originally planned, we are really excited to gather here virtually and discuss sustainability to remember the work the campus has been doing to lessen our environmental impact. While we are away, I hope you've had a chance to reflect yourself on your own environmental footprint. Personally, I've had time to mend clothes, try new recipes, and just enjoy being outside in nature more. If you haven't been able to do so yet, I encourage you to check out our Earth Day website, earthday.gautech.edu, where you'll be able to find information from the organizations that we typically have tabling at the event, recipes, one from Shan, as well as one from President Cabrera, and other ways to interact. Today, we'll be hearing from Shan. He is the director of the Kendeda Building, which is a high-performance building that serves as a model through which sustainability principles and practices will be explored, tested, and disseminated to inspire the Georgia Tech campus and change across the southeastern building industry. Georgia Tech constructed the Kendeda Building to Living Building Challenge 3.1 certification standards, the world's most ambitious building performance standard. Shan is currently on the board of directors of Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, a nonprofit that engages communities of faith in stewardship of creation as a religious response to climate change, resource depletion, environmental injustice, pollution, and other disruptions in creation. Prior to joining Georgia Tech in July 2018, Shan was with South Face Institute, where he worked with local and regional partners to increase the amount of clean energy generated in Georgia, promote energy efficiency in the built environment, and expand the region's clean energy workforce. Shan has an undergraduate and a law degree from Emory University. Shan's sustainability awakening started when he was in middle school, when he decided that it was wrong for humans to cause the extinction of another species. When he made the career shift to sustainability, he decided to focus on the built environment because everything we do to decrease the consumption of our resources ultimately benefits all species on the planet. That's why he's so excited about the Kendeda Building. This project showcases how we can radically change our relationship with the planet and each other. I'm also super excited to share the Kendeda Building with all of you today. We will be saving questions until the end, but please feel free to type them into the chat throughout the tour, and we will come to all of them at the end. So now I'd like to turn it over to Shan.
I guess I am live now. And
Yes.
so, welcome, sustainable cats and kittens. Uh, I hope all is well, and I hope everybody is sheltering in place. Welcome to the very first virtual tour of the Kendeda Building. Um, Probably not going to be the last, given everything that's going on, but thank you very much for joining. So here we are, a beautiful spring day outside of the Kendeda Building for Innovative Sustainable Design at Georgia Tech. This is a 37,000 square foot indoor and 10,000 square foot outdoor building. And the building has been getting a lot of attention lately, and that's because Georgia Tech constructed this building to the extremely rigorous Living Building Challenge version 3.1. This building is primarily a classroom and teaching lab. That means that it's really just designed to fulfill Georgia Tech's core mission, which is to educate the next generation of leaders. It is multidisciplinary. That means that students will be taking physics in here, chemistry, architecture, biology, geology, and that's by design. We want as many students, Georgia Tech students, to go through this building as possible so they can learn from it and be inspired by it. But what is it? What is the it that we keep on talking about, this Living Building Challenge? Well, let's step back and think about all the green buildings that have come before this one. Buildings that were certified to the LEED standard, probably the most famous green building standard. Buildings that were certified to local certification standards like Earthcraft. You know, these green building standards, they did so much to move the market, change building codes, to enhance people's understanding of buildings' impact on the planet. But in a resource-constrained world, is it enough to have buildings that do less harm? And the answer is no. A while ago, some architects asked, what would it look like if we started from the ground up and we constructed a building that gave back more to the environment than it took? A building that really put people at the center of its sort of purpose. And that was what sparked the Living Building Challenge. So here we are at version 3.1, and that's the level that we are seeking to attain. And the entire idea, the entire metaphor of the Living Building Challenge is a flower, because a flower shows up, takes everything that it needs from its site, its place. It leaves, disappears, having left almost no trace it was ever here except for pollen and seeds. So a flower gives back more than it takes, and that became the metaphor for the Living Building Challenge. We want to create buildings that give back more than they take. And so a flower has petals, P-E-T-A-L-S, petals. And so the Living Building Challenge has 7 performance areas, all of which have to be met, and they're called petals. And the 7 petals are place, water, energy, health and happiness, materials, equity, and beauty. So what we're going to do in the next 25 minutes is quickly go through what this building is doing to satisfy those 7 petals. And we begin outside, and we begin with place. This site used to be a parking lot. Parking lots are just awful. Rain falls onto a parking lot, it wants to go away because parking lots are impervious. And the away is usually downstream to communities that would rather not want that water, or they go into sewers. They take with them so much muck that accumulates on the parking lot. And then, of course, parking lots really have negative impacts when it comes to heat island. And we took that parking lot and we turned it into this beautiful building, right? This beautiful building where a parking lot once stood. But place is so much more than just taking a parking lot and replacing it with a building. That's happening all over downtown, Midtown, Buckhead, Atlanta. It's happening all over the country and the world. We're taking parking lots and turning them into buildings. Would you believe that this building actually is functioning more like a forest than a building? And that's the whole point. We've taken this place and reverted it back to its pre-human hydrological condition to the greatest extent possible. Across the street from the Kendeda Building is this beautiful clump of trees, right? That's kind of gives you a glimpse of what this land would have looked like before it was touched by human development. This plot of land right here retains 90% of its rainfall on site. Only 10% is runoff. The Kendeda Building mimics the plot of land across the street. This entire site manages 90% of the rainfall on site during a normal rain event. Only 10% is runoff. And the way that this happens is through management of that rainfall. And the way we do it is with the solar canopy. Solar canopy and roof combined capture 41% of rainfall. And then the pervious surfaces, like this pervious concrete, and these bioswales, they manage another 50% on site. What this does is dramatically reduce downstream impact of stormwater. What it does is dramatically reduce the burden that stormwater causes on infrastructure. So by now you might be noticing that we've gone from place and started talking about water. And even in talking about water, I mentioned the solar canopy, which is obviously something that we are using to get to net positive energy. And that's because everything in the Living Building Challenge is ultimately interconnected. While we have 7 petals, all of these petals relate to each other. None of it is in a silo. Everything has to be holistic. You have to think about everything holistically. Because when you have to satisfy so many stringent requirements, every one thing you do must hit multiple requirements. Or another way to put that is that single-use infrastructure is a luxury we no longer have. So right here we've got a stream. We have a street. And this street is really only doing one thing. It's moving vehicles. What is this street doing to mitigate rainfall becoming stormwater? What is this street doing to decrease its impact on the urban heat island effect? Right here, right next to the street, we've got a building that is managing its rainfall, lowering its impact on urban heat island while fulfilling its core mission. And that's what we mean by single-use infrastructure is a luxury we no longer have. I'm going to quickly talk some more about water. So we've talked about rainfall. We capture 41% of the rain that falls on the site. We move that to a cistern, 50,000 gallon cistern, and that cistern provides us with all of our drinking water, our water for our faucets, and for the showers. Gray water, which is the water that's left over after you wash your hands or take a shower, the way the Kendeda Building manages it is that we pump it right here to the front of the building, where there is a constructed wetland, and nature breaks down that water, and we allow for that water to then step down to the lower elevation of the building, where it slowly seeps into the ground. HVAC condensate, that's condensate that's left over after you dehumidify outdoor air. We capture that HVAC condensate and we store that water for use for irrigation. And then the last type of water is the icky stuff, right? And would you believe that all of the bio-waste in the Kendeda building stays on site for treatment? Yep, we'll talk about that later. It's always a fun part of any tour. Now we are inside the building. Say hi, Dexter. Hi, Dexter. Dexter has been manning the fort, so to speak, during this time. I haven't been in the building for 2 weeks, and one of the things that I noticed when I walked in this morning is that the building smells like wood. It's the smell of wood is just amazing. And I hope you can see why you smell so much wood. And that's because the building is predominantly constructed out of mass timber. I'll talk about that more. Right now, what I want to shift to is energy. One of the things I hope you can see is the amount of natural light that we have in the building. You know, no matter where you are in the world, the way you get to net positive energy is the conceptual way you get there is the same. All right. First, you construct a building that's very efficient, and then you have a building that has very efficient mechanical systems. Using that approach, this building is 72% more efficient than an average building of its type in this climate zone. So we got there by having triple pane windows. So you've heard of double pane windows, hopefully. It's a outside, inside piece of glass. Inside of it, in between the two pieces, is argon gas. Well, we have 3 pieces, so we have 2 argon barriers. We've got really well-constructed, really tight building where very little air comes in and out unless we want it to. We've got unique heating and cooling. Underneath this concrete are actually pipes, and those pipes are filled with either hot water or cold water, depending on whether we want to heat or cool the building. And we take advantage of the thermal mass of concrete. You know, once you heat concrete, once you cool concrete, it's going to radiate that hotness and coldness. And it's also extremely efficient. And then we've got these big fans. And you can see those big fans revolving right now. And what that does is creates this very nice, gentle breeze inside of the building. We have a very efficient outdoor air system that pulls in hot air, humid air from the outside. And through heat exchange, the cooler, drier air from the inside gets expelled outdoors. And through that heat exchange during that process, we actually bring in cooler, preconditioned air in the summertime, warmer preconditioned air in the wintertime. Those are some of the features that we do to get the building to 72% more efficient. And then on top of that, we added a 320 kilowatt, 380 kilowatt system that generates about 455,000 kilowatt hours a year. Or to put it in another way, we're supposed to be 105% net positive to get fully certified for Living Building Challenge. We have to have 12 months of continuous operation showing that we've produced more electricity than we've consumed by 5% more than we consumed. We're on track right now to hit probably 20%, 25%. The building is extremely efficient. So no matter where you are in the world, you want to build efficiently, you want to have efficient systems, and then use site-appropriate renewable energy to get you over the top. And what I mean by site-appropriate is there's some places in the world where micro wind turbines work, micro hydro would work. Down here in the south, solar really works well for us, and that's about it. So right now we're taking a look at the auditorium, 178-person auditorium. And this is where we have a lot of our introductory classes. And again, this allows us to get a lot of students through this building each year. I think the goal is to have almost every student who completes a degree at Georgia Tech, undergrad student who completes a degree at Georgia Tech, to come through this building for a class. That would be great. So we've talked about water, except for the bathrooms. We've talked about energy. Now I'm going to spend some time talking about that wonderful wood. All right. So as you can see, the building is predominantly made out of wood. And the reason is multifold. There's this technology that's been created that takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, turns it into building material. And Georgia happens to be the #1 state in the country for this technology. And that technology is called a tree. Trees are this amazing building material that we're all actually familiar with. Most of our homes are made out of trees. But commercial buildings, not so much. Well, what the Kendeda Building has done is it's used what we call mass timber. We are, I believe, the second building in the state that's showing how mass timber can be used for commercial construction. So what we mean by mass timber is you've got these really big beams. This is glue laminated timber, and it replaces carbon-intensive steel or concrete. The ceiling is made out of nail laminated timber. And again, that replaces the need for carbon-intensive steel or concrete. And what's so wonderful about wood is that you can get it locally. The wood that you see here and that was glued together to create these beams was sustainably grown in Louisiana. The wood that you see for the nail laminated timber was sustainably grown in Alabama. But then you can also use trees that have fallen down by natural causes. So all the countertops that you see in the Kendeda Building are trees that fell down from natural causes, either on campus or in South Georgia. And that's another thing you can do with wood, is salvage trees that have fallen down naturally. While we're on the topic of salvage, we can always also salvage the waste from your construction project itself. What we're looking at right here is a staircase that was made out of what would have been waste from the 4x6s that we used to construct our ceiling. So what we have done is salvaged what would have otherwise been thrown away. But what the Kendeda Building shows, and one of the imperatives of the Living Building Challenge is to get to net positive waste during the construction process, is that you can not only prevent your material from going into the garbage by finding creative ways to use it, you can actually prevent demolition material from going into the garbage by using it. So this wood you see right here that creates the ramp that's central to the building, that was from a building that had to be taken down to construct the new Georgia Tech police station. And perhaps the most iconic wood that we reused is right here, the stair tread. That is wood that was taken from Georgia Tech Tower, the very first building that was built on campus. That building was constructed in the 1880s. Some of the trees that were used to construct that building probably began their life in the 1600s. During that renovation, we salvaged the wood, and then we incorporated it into the stair tread of the Kendeda Building. And even the wood that we see here in our ceiling, there are bigger pieces of wood and then smaller pieces of wood. The wood that's in between, that's non-structural, So we were able to use salvaged wood from Atlanta film industry. 25,000 linear feet would have ended up in the garbage, and instead it is want to make sure that I wanted to make sure that everyone can still hear me. I'm getting some text messages that maybe Emma, can you
I
come
think
back
you're doing.
on? Hi.
Hi, I can hear you. I know Sarah can. I've heard from a couple others. I think some people had an issue.
Hello?
Maybe they needed to dial in, but so far so good.
All right, well, I'm going to continue because I think everybody can see me. Emma, would you mind coming back on just to let me know everything
Yes,
is working properly?
everything is going really well. People are in the chat. They're saying they can hear you. The building looks great. Tour is going awesome. So
Great, thank you. And I
we
just
are in
realized,
business.
great, and I just realized the reason I was able to hear you is because I had my phone, the volume on mute. Anyway, where I stopped was to become one of the destinations in TV, and a lot of this just ends up in the garbage. So at this point, I'd like to take just a step back and talk about one of the things that as director I really want to emphasize. Besides, hey, look, we can do it. We can build this audacious standard in the Southeast. But we knew we could do that. People are like, oh, you can't build a net positive building in the Southeast, a building that produces more electricity each year than it consumes. Yeah, we can. We can build a building that gets all of its drinking water from rain. We can do it. That wasn't the hurdle. We wanted to build this. The Kendeda Fund, which provided 100% of the funding to design and construct this building, we knew it could be done. We wanted to prove it can be done. So we take that argument off the table. Now we have arguments about why we should do it. Well, not arguments. We can have conversations about why should we do this. We can have conversations about, how do we make this more accessible. And one of the things that I do is to highlight all of the positive economic development stories and potentials that come from this building. So I already mentioned that Georgia is the #1 state in the country for timber products. Now, wouldn't it be great if more of our commercial buildings could be built out of timber harvested in a sustainable manner in the state of Georgia? Because each one of these mass timber beams replaces the need to have imported steel and carbon-intensive concrete. But this is also an engineered product. This is a manufactured product. It is a precision product. And that means we can have value additive manufacturing jobs closer to where these pieces of wood originate. Or put another way, this is an opportunity to grow Georgia's manufacturing sector by leveraging something we're already experts in, which is sustainably growing trees. On the salvage side, It takes labor to salvage these materials that would otherwise have been thrown away. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is no away. When this goes into the garbage, it's not going to Mars, it's staying on this planet. And something that my daughter and nephew and niece who are young understand is you shouldn't be throwing away perfectly good stuff. So now what we can do is we can use local labor to salvage these materials and then incorporate them into new construction projects. You know, I dream of a day where I can go into Home Depot. And yes, Home Depot, because it's a Georgia company and I'm a Georgia boy. But Home Depot, I can walk into Home Depot, Walmart, Lowe's, whatever, and I can say, show me where your salvaged goods section is. The same way I walk into a grocery store and ask, show me where the natural food section is. We have an opportunity here to grow a salvage economy where we can virtually mine landfills and prevent otherwise completely reusable material from ending up in the landfill, and they can have a new life in these beautiful buildings. Staying on the topic of materials, I'm going to talk about Red List. When I started here almost 2 years ago, I asked the project team who had already been working on the project for 3 years, what's the most difficult thing you had to deal with? I expected them to say water. Universally, every single one of them said materials. And one of the main reasons is this right here, something called the Red List. These are 22 worst in-class chemicals known to cause harm to human health and the natural environment. But those 22 chemicals and materials break out into almost 1,000 really difficult sounding and hard to pronounce chemicals. And the point is, oh, by the way, some of the stuff you've heard of, like asbestos, lead, PVC, flame retardants, but chromium-6, never knew that was until I started here. And the idea is rather simple. We spend 90% of our time indoors. And while our food has nutrition labels so we can see what's inside of our food, what is inside of our furniture? What's inside of our materials that we touch, we sit on, the paint, the fumes that we breathe? And so this notion is that we need to eliminate our society, our economy of these worst-in-class chemicals. And one of the ways you can get there is by having a declare label, where you declare what is in your product. And then for those of us who don't understand what this means, at the very bottom you can say, is it LBC Red List free? Is it LBC compliant? Or did you at least just declare what's in your product? And this is a way that the Living Building Challenge has moved the market. Some of the products that we use in this building, we just looked at the declare label, and those products have the declare label because the Living Building, they wanted to be competitive in this market. One of our subcontractors, we told them, you can't use PVC pipes. And they said, well, what do you want us to use instead? Our response was, you go figure it out. And they did figure it out. They used 100% recyclable HDPE. Those are the milk jugs, pipes made out of HDPE. And to their surprise, it literally is more flexible. It's a flexible product, and they just had to relearn how to use it, or rather learn how to use it. But they find it to actually meet their needs and their clients' needs better than PVC. So in this manner, we hope to change the market for materials. You know, I tell leadership here at Georgia Tech, I tell folks who come in from major corporations and other universities, if you really want to change the market, start buying and insisting on red list free materials, start incorporating and requiring the incorporation of salvaged materials into your construction projects, that's how you're really going to move the market. We already have evidence of this. A lot of things that were fairly common a decade ago, good luck even finding them. For example, incandescent light bulbs. Good luck finding an incandescent light bulb. 10 years ago, it was hard to find LEDs. Now it's hard to find incandescent. All right. We are now on our gorgeous, beautiful rooftop garden. So one of the imperatives inside the place pedal is urban farming. And we satisfy the urban farming requirement by having these beautiful blueberry bushes, by growing seasonal plants and vegetables. And then if you can see way over there in the distance are honeybees. Georgia Tech has an urban honeybee project, and we are honored to have the urban honeybee project move to the Kendeda Building. So the pollinator plants that we have on site will provide the urban honeybees their food, and they will turn that into honey, which we will harvest. And so that's one of the ways that we're going to meet our urban agriculture requirement. While we're on the roof, I also want to showcase the solar panels. It's easier to see up here, but at the end of these solar panels, we actually have gutters. I'm going to crack it with my finger. Let's see where my finger is. Okay, it's over here. So that right there is the gutter. That's how we capture rainfall and take that to the roof. And that rainfall is then collected and moved to the 50,000 gallon cistern, which is where we're going right now. Take a look at the cistern, and then we're going to take a look at the toilets. Oh, so real quick, this is one of our 64-person classrooms right here. There's a sister mirror right next door, and then we have 3 teaching labs up here, 1 teaching lab downstairs, this beautiful central atrium common space. We will eventually have a coffee cart over there. We have a seminar room, a design studio, flexible design studio, conference room and offices over there where the Office of Campus Sustainability, our Global Change Program, Kendeda Building staff, that's where we sit, over there. Going back to the water, so the roof captures the water, and then we have first flush filters out some of the muck, and then that rainwater goes underground into the cistern. Where we have overflow, it just goes outdoors. And right now what we're doing is walking towards the cistern. Over here. You wouldn't even know it. It's kind of hard to see a 50,000 gallon cistern. So we've created this beautiful person hole cover that lets the world know here underneath us is 50,000 gallons of rainwater. At this point, I like to say that by design, the building is supposed to use only rainwater for all potable purposes. That includes drinking water. We were hoping to be done with our rainwater to potable water testing, but the shutdowns happened, and so now that's on hold. Currently, we are still on city water, but things are looking really good that we're going to be on our cistern water very soon. Right now, I am in one of the women's bathrooms. I'm going to step back now and talk about equity. Right? We are going to talk about equity, but Equity in the built environment is very important, and it's something that's actually not very well understood. But this is one thing I'd like to show that we were very purposeful about when it came to equity. I'm going to go into the men's bathroom. The men's bathroom has, hello, is anyone in here? Okay. Men's bathroom has one stall, 2 waterless urinals. Right here behind us, behind this wall, is the family restroom. Okay. Let's open that up and show it to you. It's the family restroom that also has a shower. We used the men's restroom to take up space for the family restroom. And the women's restrooms have 4 stalls. So shout out to equity right there. All right, real quick. Right here, this black slate tile, that was slate tiles on top of Georgia Tech's Alumni House. That roof went up in the 1920s. There was a water leak. Normally, these tiles would have been thrown away. Now they have a new lease on life here in the Kendeda Building to make this beautiful. And I keep on saying beautiful, by the way, because beauty is one of the petals. This beautiful wall, and they are going to outlive us. But here we are. Here we are, and the one thing that people are always talking about, I don't know if you can hear the buzzing noise, but one thing people are always talking about are the toilets in the Kendeda Building. At this point, I'm going to step back and tell you something that I wish I could see your faces, because I've had tours in here where there's like 30 people. I stop and I say, if you want to do something locally that has global climate impacts, go to the bathroom in the Kendeda Building. People usually look at me funny, and they say, where's he going with this? Well, here's where I'm going with it. It's called the energy-water nexus. It not only takes a lot of water to produce electricity. Think about all those steam turbines that need to be turned. It also takes a lot of electricity to produce and deliver our drinking water. The way it happens here in the Southeast is the water comes from reservoirs. We use electricity to then pump that water to central treatment plants, where we use electricity to get that water to drinking standards, and we use electricity to pump that water into buildings like the Kendeda Building. And commercial buildings like the Kendeda Building, the vast majority of that water is used to poo and pee in. 67% of the electricity in this state comes from burning fossil fuels. It's seasonal, so I'm giving you an average. 67% comes from burning fossil fuels. So there's a lot of carbon pollution baked into that water that we're pooing and peeing in. Then you need more electricity to convey that wastewater to a central wastewater treatment plant that uses more energy to bring that wastewater up to an acceptable level where it can get discharged back into the environment. And by the way, if you know anything about this region, you know that oftentimes we fail. And now we're dumping polluted water, sewage, into the rivers where it becomes someone else's problem downstream. That's an equity impact. I think we can all agree that we should no longer be pooing and peeing in drinking water, but I don't think people have stepped back to really think about the amount of carbon pollution that is baked into drinking water. Now, compare that with what we do here in the Kendeda Building. So what you're seeing is a foam flush toilet. There is about a teaspoon of water that is used per foam flush. Only a teaspoon. And the reason we can do that is because we've got this highly slick, and you can see here, highly slick soap, biodegradable soap. And that's all we use. And then we take that waste and store it in these 6 giant compost bins, which I'm showing you right now. And yeah, that's it. Then we treat it on site. We don't connect to a sewer. So compare what our traditional mechanism for doing this, water the highly energy intensive, infrastructure intensive with what we do. The starting point is the same. We start with rainfall. We just store our rainfall right here, behind this wall, 50,000 gallons. And then we treat that rainfall to get it up to potable standards. Again, we're waiting for the final blessing from the authorities, but here it is. Here's the system. Then we take a teaspoon of this water and use it in our toilets. And then after we're done, we manage that waste on site. And now I hope you understand why I tell people that if you really want to make a global impact on climate change, go to the bathroom in the Kendeda Building. So where does all that waste end up? It ends up here, in this room. Right here in this room, where we've got, and by the way, six bags, and then we've got these two tanks that are 1,000 gallons each. Your bio waste comes into one of these 6 bins where we have a very high-tech system. So high-tech that we've got
Hey, Shan, it's a little hard to hear you now that you're downstairs.
Okay. I will just be here for a minute.
Okay.
This is where it ends up. I'm now practically screaming. This is where it ends up, right?
That's better. We can hear you better. Great.
So what I was saying is, no, this is actually not high tech. This is positively low tech. Human waste comes here where we have pine shavings. Natural systems break it down. Most of your biosolid is, in fact, also liquid. So the liquid percolates down here where we've got a sump pump that pumps the liquid to one of these 2 holding tanks, 1,000 gallons each. It's probably going to take about 5 years for the solid to accumulate. But right here, 1,000 gallons, 1,000 gallons. It only takes 4 weeks to fill these up. Or let me rephrase that. It takes 4 weeks to fill it up. Think about it. We've got 20 toilets in Europe in this building, yet it takes 4 weeks to fill up 2,000 gallons. And that's because the vast majority of the liquid that's in there actually went through our system. What do we do with it afterwards? We take it to a plant in Cartersville, Georgia, where it's stripped of its nutrients and turned into fertilizer. So again, this building does not connect to the sewer. In some places in the country, it's perfectly legal to take that liquid compost and land apply it to areas where human beings aren't walking or where they're not growing food. So to close out that loop, not only are we radically decreasing the amount of carbon pollution that comes from the conveyance of drinking water, so much fertilizer is actually used, so much fertilizer is produced using petrochemicals. If we just had site-specific treatment of human waste, we could turn it into fertilizer. You know, in many ways, what the building does with its stormwater, turning rainwater, which is preventing it from becoming stormwater by acting like a forest, we do the same thing with our waste. Okay, what we do with our waste is we act like we're a forest. If you've ever been in the woods, you're not constantly stepping in animal poo because nature breaks it down very quickly. The problem with human infrastructure is we inundate it. We concentrate our waste. And if we just treated our waste the same way the forest treats the waste, I think that we could dramatically reduce those on the societal burdens. Real quick, I want to show you Right now, the building, granted it's practically empty, but the building is producing 10 times more electricity than it is consuming. So with that, I want to open it up. There's so many things that I would have liked to have talked to you guys about, but for the sake of time, let's just open it up and let's have a conversation.
Okay, great. So
I hope that was
far,
good. It's the first time I've ever done something like this. I hope you enjoyed it.
yes, we have a lot of compliments coming in. Everyone is really enjoying everything so far. We do have a few questions. I'm just going to read them in the order that they were posted in our Q&A tab. And Sarah's been tracking along and commenting in the chat section. So our first question, you touched a little bit on the red list, but specifically, are there special considerations for products that were used to treat the wood in the building?
Great question. So because it's indoors, this is untreated wood. That's the answer. It's untreated wood. But, when it comes to red list, it's a philosophy. So the rule is no red list. The rule is no red list products. Asterisks. Unless there's no alternative. We have products in this building that should not have any red list material, but they do because there's no alternative. So one of the things that the Living Building Challenge says it is first it's a philosophy, then it's an advocacy tool, and then it's a certification program. So when it comes to advocacy, we have to send out letters to companies that have products with red list material in it. We say, look, your product was the best product we could find, but it still has red list material in it, and we really think you should consider removing red list materials from your product. We have vetted every single permanent piece of material in this building against the red list. I can say that it's probably the cleanest building in the state, but a very tiny fraction of the permanent materials that were used to construct this building do have red list materials in it, components in it. Tiny fraction.
Awesome.
Tiny.
The next question, can you reiterate what percentage of the building's electricity is from renewable sources?
Right. So it's 72% more efficient than a normal building. Then we've got a solar canopy that will generate 455,000 kilowatt hours per year. By the Living Building Challenge requirement, after 12 months of continuous operation, we were supposed to have 105% of our electricity come from renewable sources, on-site renewable sources. So what that means is if I consume 100 kilowatt hours of electricity, then I got to generate 105 kilowatt hours on site. Right now, the building, and I know it's been a weird month, we've essentially been shut down, but before this happened, from December, January, and February, we were, I think, 40% plus. 30%. I don't remember exactly, but we were net positive when it was modeled to be net negative. Now, yes, we had a milder winter than normal, but we also had, I think, the wettest winter on record. So the building was full of students. The building was full of events during the first 7-8 weeks of the school year before everything went into shutdown. We were overcast, so we were generating less solar electricity, but we were still net positive because the building is just that energy efficient. So what we've learned is it's extremely important. Well, let me rephrase that. We already knew it, but what we have shown is extremely important to always lead with energy efficiency.
All right. Next question. Can you talk a little bit about the furniture and where it came from?
Okay. So the furniture is interesting. Great question. The only furniture that has to meet the red list is actually the furniture that's in the workstations, the offices, because that furniture is deemed to be permanent, right? Oops, sorry. Just trying to zoom in. So that is from a company called Tankion. I might be mispronouncing the name of the company. That's Tankion. The rest of the furniture does not have to meet red list because it's not permanent. And I do not remember off the top of my head where we got this furniture from. But even in these situations, we went with vendors that have, better quality product when it comes to sustainability and chemicals used. But whoever asked that question, I will get the answer to that question and email it to you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is about how long building construction took and how did the cost of construction per square foot compare to similar buildings of a lower environmental standard?
Oh, I've never gotten that question before. All right, so construction started in early of 2018, winter of 2018, construction completed fall of 2019. Delay was there because of an extremely wet fall of 2018 and winter of 2018. So that impacted our construction timeline, but it also impacted the construction timeline of almost every building that was being constructed between here and North Carolina. Now, cost. Okay, so first of all, the cost of the building is about, you can go to livingbuilding.gatech.edu, and we've got these specifics, but it's about $400 per square foot when you take into account both the outside and inside, and about $500 per square foot if you just look at the inside. Now, I'm going off memory, but the website's got the precise number. There is something that you need to keep in mind, though, when we talk about the cost of this building as compared to the cost of a conventional building. First of all, this is the first living building version 3.1 building in the Southeast at this scale. I mean, this is a very big building when it comes to living buildings. All right, 37,000 square foot indoors is a tiny building. It's a big living building. That's one thing you need to keep in mind. We're the first, and whenever you're the first, you're going to have some costs that others don't have. That's why the Kendeda Fund paid 100% of the design and construction of this building at Georgia Tech. We hope to lower the costs for everyone else. I mean, think about it. We are doing this right here on a camera that I'm holding in my pocket. And I got two of them. I mean, this would have been tens of thousands of dollars of equipment 20 years ago, and now you can do it easily, and that's because costs have come down so much. But how many buildings begin their life with this? Buildings are going to be their own municipal water system. Here water. We're going to take water that we store behind here.
We're losing you a little bit down there, Shan.
Right. I'm going to start again. How many buildings begin their life as a municipal water system? We're going to be the smallest municipal water system in the entire state. That's like us, and that the cost of this system is spread across 37,000 square feet indoors. So that's one of the things that dramatically increases the per square foot cost of this building, is that we're going to be our own municipal water system. Then we have about $1 million worth of solar panels on our roof. Again, most buildings aren't trying to be net positive. So we've got $1 million worth of solar panels. But think about it this way. As designed, this building is going to remain net positive for 25 years. So as designed, we have pre-bought 25 years of electricity. and bake that cost into the upfront cost of the system. As designed, the building should not run out of water. So we're going to get all of our drinking water from the sky. And as designed, we don't connect to the sewer. So it's really unfair to compare a fully certified living building. Now, we're not fully certified yet. We have to finish our 12 months of performance period, but we're designed to essentially prepay for a massive chunk, multiple decades of solar electricity, and to never consume water from the grid and never send our waste to the sewers. Those are costs that other buildings, conventional buildings, just don't have to absorb up front. Those are costs they pay along the way. And by the way, if the price of water goes up, their costs go up. If the price of water goes up, our costs don't go up. We've baked that cost in. So what I like to say is that building to these standards from a commercial perspective is like buying insurance, right? You're buying insurance against price shocks, price increases for electricity, for water, for sewer. And if you're a commercial building and you've built to this standard, and we do have an increase in price for electricity, when we have an increase of price for electricity, water, and sewer, your competitors are going to have to absorb those costs and pass them on to the tenant. You're not going to. You've basically shielded yourself from that.
Okay, great. Well, we're starting to run out of time. I know a lot of people have other meetings and virtual things that they need to get back to, but I'm super excited by the conversation that we've had in the chat and the questions. Shan, thank you so much. The tour was really, really good. We have a lot of compliments in the chat, so hopefully we'll be able to save those and share them with you. But thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Shan. And if your question wasn't answered, please reach out to us or check out the Living Building website, livingbuilding.gatech.edu, as well as the Earth Day website for some other content, earthday.gatech.edu. And thank you, Sarah, for keeping up with the chat, keeping everyone up to date. So thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you again.
Happy Earth Day.